So welcome to our first full lesson. This is called 1.1, Add Integers Using the Inverse Property of Addition. This is what would be on the screen if you were at school, but obviously you're hopefully in your seat and ready to work, but there's not going to be a bell. But here's one, ding. So every lesson begins with a warm-up. I expect that you can do what's in the warm-up without any help. So go ahead and do that. Pause the video, and then I will put up the solutions. So these are integers. That means they're not fractions or decimals. And on every number line in the universe starts at 0. 0 doesn't have to be in the middle, but it can be. But number lines go on forever in both directions, starting at 0. That's why there's arrows on the end of your number lines. So hopefully you've already made a number line and you've put these numbers on it. So hopefully if you start at 0, positive 1 obviously goes there. Then it goes 2, 3, 4. There's 5, 6, and 7. If you haven't, pause the video and put -9 and -5 on the number line. So if we're starting at 0, then -1 is right next to it, right? And then we go -2, -3, -4, and -5 is right there. -6, -7, -8, and there is -9. So what would be the smallest number on this number line? Well, of the ones I've given you, it would be -9. Smallest is always in this direction. Largest is always in this direction. So -1 million, is that big or small? It's very, very small. -1 million is way over here. All right, see if you can answer the questions below. Now in 7th grade, hopefully you learned that if you have 2 negatives and 2 positives and add them together, they cancel each other out and make nothing. So -2 plus 2 is 0. So what is -2 plus 9? Well, if you have 2 negatives, 9 positives, the -2 and then positive 2 of the positives cancel each other out. And what's left is +7. We don't write the symbol, positive symbol, but it's there. You should be able to do the next two if you haven't. -5 plus +5, just like the one above it. Everything cancels out, and that's 0. So if you have -5 or 5 negatives plus +3, notice we don't write the positive symbol there. We didn't write the positive symbol there, but it is. This is a plus symbol, an adding symbol, not a positive symbol. And you know that because where it is. So we have 5 negatives plus 3 positives. And so that must be -2. So, question. If you have $50 in your pocket, but you owe a friend $57, do you really have any money? Right? You have $50, but you also owe another person $57, and we're going to assume they're a friend, so you're planning to pay them back. No, you have less than 0, right? You are at -$7. So 50 plus -57 is -7. And one of the ways I like to think of negative numbers is owing people money. So you're going to take your first notes. Now, lots of students like to copy notes exactly the way they are, and you can do that. But if you know something already, you're allowed to take little shortcuts. That's totally allowed, as long as you write something that indicates that you took the notes. All right. So opposites are the same distance from zero. So what number is the exact same distance as 6 from 0? Write that down. Well, it's -6, right? Because 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces from 0. And the only other number that's 6 spaces from 0 is -6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, that is the official textbook definition of an opposite. They are the same distance from 0. But right, it's the same number, once positive, once negative. Now look at what I wrote. I wrote 6 comma -6. Did anyone write 6 equals -6? Don't do that. That's not true. They're opposites. They're not equal. And if you did that, you're using equal sign like here comes the answer. And that's not what equal sign means. Equal sign means those are the same. So never write an equal sign with things that are not the same. 6 and -6 are opposites. All right, so what's the opposite of -4? Obviously 4. Find the same number that is the same distance from 0 as -7. Well, that's obviously +7. It's opposite. It's the same question. This is how the bottom question is how the standard for this is phrased. What numbers are the same distance from 0? The opposites. So what's the same distance from 0 as x? Well, the opposite of x. Now you can say what I just wrote as -x, perfectly acceptable, or you can say the opposite of x. That's how that's said. Either way is correct. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of notes. When something works in all situations, we call it a property. A property is just a rule. And we state that property using letters called variables that represent any number. When you see x or y, it's representing any possible numbers. The inverse property says of addition states that opposites added together always equal 0. All right. So using what we saw in the warm-up, and now that you know that opposites added together are always 0, what's the answer to -1 plus +1? Has to be 0, right? Now that's an adding symbol. The positive symbol is not written. That's -1 plus +1. And those are opposites, so they're 0. So what's x plus the opposite of x? That's 0. And that's how you would write an example for the inverse property of addition. X is representing any number, plus its opposite. And this -x is any opposite of that x. All right, and they have to add up to 0. So there's only one number that can fill that blank, and that is -1048. Now notice I put parentheses around that. I put parentheses around that because we don't like plus symbols next to negative signs. I did it right on the one with x as well. Notice there's no parentheses around that first one there. Why? Because it's not because it's negative it got the parentheses. It got the parentheses because you have a plus, an adding symbol, and a negative symbol next to each other. And math does not like that. It looks weird, right? If you write 7 plus -7 like that, it looks like 7 plus -7, right? So we would always write it with parentheses. But if you switch it around, -7 plus 7, no parentheses needed. So if you understand what we just learned, this problem is easy. -4 plus 4 is 0, so 0 plus 13 is 13. Keep going. 843 and negative 843 are opposites, so they add up to 0. And 0 plus negative 11, I think, is negative 11. Opposites don't have to be next to each other. So 74 and negative 74 add up to 0. 0 plus 26 is 26. So now we're going to draw some pretty pictures of adding positive and negative numbers. So we're going to have 3 boxes, and in the first box, we're going to put 2 negatives. In the second box, we're going to put 7 positives. And it doesn't matter how you draw them. What do you think goes in the last box? Fill it in. Well, 2 negatives cancel out 2 of the positives, right? Because negative 2 plus positive 2 is 0. And so we have 5 extra positives left over, and we're going to draw those in there. And what does that mean? It means negative 2 plus 7 is positive 5. Let's draw another one. Do this one on your own. Pause the video. So we have 3 positives this time. Let's use blue to be consistent. And 8 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The positives and negatives cancel each other out. 3 and 3. And we get 5 extra negatives. So we'll say 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. Very different than the one above, but the same thinking. Right? So you don't have to copy that. Just tell me what you would put in the last box and what math problem are we trying to do here. So you'll have 4 positives. We're adding together to them 5 negatives. And so 4 plus negative 4 would be 0. So there must be 1 extra negative here, and the answer to 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Same thing here. This is negative 3 plus positive 5 positive 6, my fault, I can't count. And so this is positive 3. So now we're going to take the pictures away. So what is negative 9 plus 2? Well, it's negative 7. Now, if you didn't understand that, draw it out. There are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 negatives. We're adding 2 positives to it, and there are 7 extra negatives. There they are. So the answer is negative 7. Try that one. 10 plus negative 4 is positive 6, right? We have 10 positives. But as we get bigger numbers, we don't want to sit here and draw them all the time. That would take forever, right? So we have to be able to picture that in our head. And I don't want to draw 21 negatives. What's negative 21 plus 29? Right? Negative 21 plus positive 21 would be 0. So there are 8 extra positives there. The answer is positive 8. 38 plus negative 21. Again, negative 21 plus 21 is 0, so there are 17 extra positives. Fred had $68 in his pocket, but owed his friend $14. So what I'm trying to get you to do here is $68 plus owing $14. Now, dollars. You owe $14 and you're planning to pay him back. See, how much money do you have after you pay him back? Now, if you can do it in your head, great. But sometimes with these problems, when they get bigger, you may have to come over to the side, right? we're adding negatives here, but the math that you do on the side is subtraction, right? But I don't want to say that. We're adding a negative. So 8 minus 4 is 4. We borrowed from there. And so 5 minus 1 is 4. And 68 minus 14 is 4. I feel like I'm messing up. Nope, I'm not. All right, so it's $44. I have $44 because I only owe him 14. And what am I doing wrong? Oh, I didn't have to borrow here. That's what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, I made a mistake on the very first lesson. So it's 54, right? There was no borrowing here. All right, so it's 54. And so it's $54 is what I have. All right, so typically if we were in class at this point, I would be getting out whiteboards and we'd practice, but there's nothing new at this point. Once you see the word practice in a lesson, we're just practicing. So go and do see if you can do all 6 problems you will see on the screen. So there are 6 problems here. If you're following along on the worksheet, you can see them, but I will put them up. Notice in this one, you can't put the 58 up top. The bigger number when you do subtraction, whether it's this or any other time, right, has to go up top when you subtract. So 80 minus 58 is 22. So there's 22. So how much money does Sam really have? He has less than 0. He owes 22. So you could write it as negative 22. You could have also written he owes 22, but we're trying to learn about negatives, so that's why I would do it that way, right? He owes more money than he has. He owes $22 more than he has. So everyone will have a different example here, but here's mine. Any number y plus its opposite equals 0. All right, thanks for your attention on the first lesson.